if Canada gets through their quarterfinal, Canada and the U.S. both get through their quarterfinal, and Sweden gets past the Czechs, we'll see Canada USA in the semifinals of the World Hockey Championship because hockey is statecraft. And that's what I'm going to close out on. So we have the playoffs of the 2025 IIHF World Hockey Championships taking place in Sweden and Finland, I believe. Canada and the US are both through to the knockout round, and the bracket might just conspire to give us a rematch of the game that broke everybody's brains and television records just a few months ago, the Four Nations Face-Off Final. That was where Connor McDavid scored in overtime and Canada spontaneously rediscovered its sense of national purpose for 36 hours. Now, at the other end of the calendar and across the ocean in Stockholm, there's a small but very real chance that we get the sequel, maybe in the semifinals, maybe in the gold medal game, maybe not at all. But if it does happen, don't kid yourself. It'll be an international incident dressed up in shoulder pads and mouth guards. The quarterfinals, on one side, we got Canada taking on Denmark, Switzerland taking on Austria, and on the other side, it's USA versus Finland, and Sweden versus the Czech Republic. After that, the winners are reseeded based on their group stage records, points, goal differential, goals scored, and original tournament seed, which is a fancy way of saying that the best team left gets the weakest team remaining, right? And that's how we end up with two possible North American collisions. If all four favorites win, we will get Canada USA in the semifinals. If there is an upset, like say Austria beats Switzerland, which I don't think is going to happen, or if Czechia beats Sweden, which definitely could happen, we would potentially have, if both teams made it, Canada USA in the gold medal game. So it's a little bit of math, but also a little bit of fate, depending on what country you think you want to see have success in this tournament. Speaking of which, in the quarterfinals, Canada is a minus 1,800 favorite against Denmark. That's obviously not a betting opportunity. That's more just a religion. Like, you don't gamble on God. The puck line, however, sits at minus 3.5 goals with plus money, which makes sense because Canada has covered that in more than half their games, and Denmark's defense gives up goals like it's donated to charity. Yeah, so plus 3.5 with plus money on the side of Denmark. Minus 3.5, I think I saw it like minus 120 for Canada. USA Finland is a very different beast. Minus 200 for the Americans, which implies about 67% win percentage. Finland has UC Saros and net, which is like playing blackjack with 5 aces in your pocket. This is one of those games where the better team might be able to lose because the guy with the pads decides to become a folk hero for 60 minutes. If you want safety in this game, I feel like Finland plus 1.5 and maybe under 5 goals is a good look. Canada minus 3.5. Just because it's Canada, I'm not going to touch that in any way. But I feel like it's Denmark, so I feel like Canada might be able to win like a 7-0 game. But I'm not going to count on it. But if you want to have the dream parlay, I feel like, yeah, if you want to have the dream parlay, Canada, USA, Switzerland is minus 140. And if that happens, if that happens, we're going to get Canada, USA more than likely, right? Yeah, if that happens, it depends on if Sweden beats the Czech Republic. But yeah, I guess you can make that a favorites across the board parlay. I don't know what that number is, but Canada, USA, Switzerland minus 140 because Switzerland is definitely not losing to Austria. And then we just got to hope that the reseeding gods, the hockey gods of the reseeding process, smile on my narrative here. So what has to happen? Again, let me just reiterate. If all 4 favorite wins, that gives us Canada as the 1 seed, Switzerland as the 2 seed, Sweden as the 3 seed, USA as the 4 seed, reseeding the pairs 1 versus 4, Canada, USA in the semifinals. For a final, we would have to see at least one upset between Switzerland or Sweden, and that would push USA out of the lowest seed spot and keeps Canada and USA apart until the gold medal game. So right now, the semifinal path has about a 39% chance. The final scenario is about 25%. A third possibility is that one of them just loses before it even happens. There's also another possibility that they could meet in the bronze medal game, which would be pretty funny. But yeah, it seems like they're on a collision course. That's why I just wanted to talk about this too, because it would just be a perfect thing to come together and to just resurface again and be a reminder of this new rivalry between these two nations. And yeah, Canada USA in hockey, it isn't just a rivalry. It's like a type of psychological therapy between these two nations. It's a projection screen on ice. It's your drunk relative at your family reunion picking a fight with the guy next door. It's very much that. Like in February, the Four Nations face off was the most watched hockey game in ESPN history. And when McDavid scored in OT, Canadian politicians were making sovereignty jokes. American pundits were calling it a warning shot. And a bunch of us, whether we wanted to admit it or not, felt really something ancient and real, right? Like a cultural artifact that was dressed up as a hockey game. And the hockey game that made the world, or made our country at least feel, the hockey game that made our country feel temporary, orderly. And we all know that it's embarrassing to care this much about anything that doesn't really matter, right? But we do, because we live in a settler colonial state in the end stage of capitalism with no civic duty or religion of any kind that we could believe in besides these cultural framework artifacts like hockey. And because in these instances against the US, it's really the only time that we get to feel like that we matter more than America, because we've outscored all of our political imagination to guys in skates, and that's Canada. So a Canada USA rematch in Stockholm would bring all that nice cringe catharsis back. Same story, slightly different lighting, early morning or early afternoon matchup on, I think it would be on Sunday the 25th or something like that. But yeah, it would just be perfect. This tournament really isn't going to just be about medals if that matchup rearises. And also looking ahead to 2026 in Milan for the Olympics, you're looking at this Team Canada. Nathan MacKinnon and Sidney Crosby are probably playing in their, maybe not their last, but their very few. They don't want to be playing in this tournament ever again, right? Because they're reaching the end of their careers, and they were hoping that they could probably be in the playoffs instead of being in this tournament. Brini, Macklin Celebrini, Logan Cooley, Matty Bernier, they're all trying to carve their names into that Olympic roster in 2026. And so if these two teams meet, coaches are going to be watching every power play, every matchup, every goalie tell, like it's that pre-Olympic scout footage. That's really what we're going to see, because if we see these two teams meet up here in the next few days, it's going to seem like a middle chapter, in my opinion, in what is like a trilogy of spectacles. The Four Nations face off in February, which was like the reboot of this mythology. This World Championships here in May, which is going to be like a test of depth and a proof of concept for both teams heading into 2026. And then February next year, 1 year since the Four Nations, that's when the real war between these nations will begin on the sheet of ice. And if this is an act two, it's gonna be brutal, beautiful, slightly off peak because it's the World Championships, the Stanley Cup playoffs still going on. But it's going to be exactly what a serious rivalry needs. So hopefully we get there. If you put it plainly, Canadians will feel like better people if we defeat Team USA in this tournament. Americans will feel like they're being held back by some type of foreign ice rules and Euro trash officiating. And everybody watching will subconsciously project national values onto puck possession. That's the function of these games. It's a mirror on ice. The odds say that the game is going to be tight. The culture says that it's going to be mythic. If you care about these types of things, I'm certainly going to be streaming if they meet up. The truth is somewhere in the middle. It's definitely not going to matter even a percentage as much as Canada, USA back in the Four Nations did, but we'll remember it anyways, and it'll be a feeling to chase headed into February of next year as we go into the Olympics. Again, if this game happens, and it might not, it very well might not, and this whole video might be pointless of me of making, but it's either way, if it does happen, it's not going to save our country. It's not going to fix housing or end wars or reverse climate change, but it will give you one perfect excuse to feel something sincere in a world that is, yeah, it will give you one perfect excuse to feel something sincere in a world that punishes sincerity. And that's dumb. And that's the beautiful thing about Canada versus USA in hockey. At least for me, I don't really like this country, but I'll die on the ice for it because it's the only place that we still know how and are willing to fight. Talk to you later.